Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Before I get started with today's episode, I wanted to ask if you could please go to the description of this podcast or video and take a survey. I am trying to figure out who my audience is, also what you like about my show, what you don't like about my show. I'm trying to come up with new themes and think about new types of guests, and any information you can give me in the survey would be super helpful, and it takes less than 10 minutes. So thanks so much for doing that. Now, my guest today, I'm going to kind of just jump right into who she is. Her name is Sunshine the Sober Witch, basically is her name. And that's a lot to think about, like, who is this person? Before interviewing her, I think she reached out to me she had to have reached out to me to be interviewed. And I think her name alone made me kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, oh, like, who is this person? And but we had a fantastic conversation. She basically is sober. She's been sober, I believe, 6 years. My memory's serving me correctly. And she's helped other people. And she is a witch. And she's just got a really interesting story. And I love just hearing about who she was, about how she helps people, what people think about what witches are today and stuff. Because, if you think about like a witch when you were growing up, or at least when I was growing up, it was, the lady with the big nose and the wart on it, and she had to wear all black, and she flew in a broom, and she had a big black hat and stuff. Or you think about maybe witches as being, part of Satan or whatever, the devil and hell and evil and all that other stuff. That's probably what religious people think of witches. I always related witches also to Halloween as I was growing up. And but there's different types of witches and stuff. And she's none of those things that I just mentioned. So she's her own unique person. She likes to help people. She had an amazing energy with her about herself whenever I was interviewing her. I really appreciated her taking the time for me to let me interview her, and her telling me about herself and her life and how she got her name Sunshine. And we really kind of got into it. So super interesting person. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. And thanks for listening, and leave a comment and let me know what you think about Sunshine the Sober Witch. Thanks so much. Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. I'm your host, Randles-Friedman. I want to welcome my guest today, Sunshine, and you call yourself the pink-haired sober witch. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Zach. Glad to be here.
So tell me how you came up with that name.
Sunshine, the pink-haired sober witch. Well, the sunshine was gifted to me by the universe back around 2009. I had a dear friend of mine whose daughter was 3 years old. I hadn't seen her in a while, and all of a sudden she started asking her mom for Auntie Sunshine.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I showed up at the house, and all of a sudden her little daughter comes running over, Auntie Sunshine. And my friend looked at me and said, "You're Sunshine?" I said, I guess I am. So it's kind of stuck, it's just been a nickname. And when I stepped into recovery, over 6 years ago, it just felt so much more. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they go through transitions in life, feel like they're reborn. And so I felt like I was reborn. I took the name. I think it was like a month after I stepped into recovery, the same thing. I'd always put like streaks in my hair, but I'd never gone like full pink. And so I told my hairdresser, I said, put it all pink. I said, I'm done hiding. I'm done not showing up in the world in the way that I want to show up.
Yep.
And so you add all that together, and the fact that I'm recovering from alcoholism and the practice witchcraft.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I respect it so much because my brother is, I should know the years. It's either 12 or 13 years sober. And so, 12 or 13 years ago, before he decided to go to rehab himself, I kept telling my mom, you're going to get a call any day now and he's going to be gone. Just prepare yourself for this. That's where we were. So what was your kind of, and there's a lot of people that have addiction. And what was your point where you're like, I gotta stop this. I gotta get help and I want to be sober.
Yeah. I, I think that it's interesting, and I've been given some thought to this. I think that there is whispers of this well before the time actually comes that you finally decide to like take the leap. For me specifically, there were two major catalysts, and one was my father, who I grew up in an alcoholic household. My father drank my entire life, and in 2017, the end of 2017, he found himself on his deathbed because his heart was only pumping at 6%. His liver and his kidneys were shutting down.
Did he make it?
He did. He got a really, really intense surgery that, it's this bridge surgery to a heart transplant, and then had a heart transplant in 2018. But as my father is going into the hospital for this heart transplant in 2018, my cousin, who is a year younger than me, was also in the hospital where his body was now shutting down from alcoholism.
Wow.
So I had these two people who I loved and cared about very much, and I was literally watching what the effect of alcohol was doing to their bodies. And I knew, obviously, growing up in the household that I did, what it did to the family unit, what it did to me. And this just causes this gigantic mirror to go up in front of you and you start asking yourself, like, what am I doing to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, do you still kind of look back and be like, you're so proud? You should be so proud of yourself. 6 years is such a milestone. You should you ever like celebrate yourself? I know you probably do every year on the anniversary, but do you do it just sometimes during the year too?
I am so grateful. The times where I'm like the most grateful, and it's like this feeling of being very proud and celebratory, is when life really like hits you, gives you a big shit sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's hard, it's tough, and you can feel the somatic of like, whether it's getting into an argument with someone and you realize, I didn't turn to alcohol. I didn't turn to self-destructive behaviors. I'm not over here beating myself up. I'm not getting caught up in a huge shame and guilt spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in those moments where absolutely I celebrate, because once upon a time, I was the individual that if I wasn't numbing, I was probably lashing out or causing more chaos just because I didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling.
That was my brother totally.
Yeah.
And he reflects back on that sometimes whenever we talk or we see each other like once or twice a year, and we can joke about it now. He's like, like we're at that point where it is, but I just can't. I never thought because my parents did send him to rehab several times, and it never stuck because they were making him go. And he had DUIs and he had all this other stuff. And now whenever he decided the day after his birthday that he was going to go on his own, that's whenever it stuck. And now he's married. He owns his own house. He has his own cars. He has he has a great job. I mean, he's everything that my mom always wanted him to be. So it's just, I'm so proud of him. So shout out to my brother, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me the moment or experience that kind of set you on your spiritual path to kind of be a witch and a healer, and tell my audience like what a witch and a healer is.
I was raised Catholic, so I went to Catholic school all the way up till 12th grade. But there was somewhere along the line that things just didn't feel right. So I've identified as a witch for the majority of my adult life since I was like 16, right? I practiced spells. I did a lot of reading, a lot of research. But it wasn't until I stepped into recovery and I got through, I stepped in, I kind of went into a traditional recovery program. And after 90, these 90 meetings in 90 days, I I had to look at myself and say, like, how am I going to stay sober? Right? That's
Hmm.
great. I've gotten here,
Yeah.
but how do I keep it? And so I did an evaluation and looked around, and the people that I admired, that I saw had a lot of years in, that weren't struggling with relapses, that looked like they were enjoying life, they all had one thing in common, and they had some spiritual belief that was important to them and ingrained in their daily life.
Hmm.
And so when I asked myself that, I knew without a doubt that it was the practice of witchcraft and the belief of magic and these esoteric kind of concepts that really mattered. And so to answer your question, I mean, and I get this often, like sometimes people hear the word witch and they automatically are going to jump into it's dark,
Hmm.
it's dangerous, it's
Yeah.
satanic, it's
That's why I
evil.
wanted you to say it, because I know that's not what it is. So.
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that. I understand that there's a lot of story out there that paints it into a misunderstood place. But for me, a witch is an individual that believes in and practices the psychic arts, right? So we believe in our intuition, we believe in our psychic gifts, we believe in our ability to hear from spirit, we
Hmm.
believe, and this can be, using tarot cards, pendulum, but if you can hear spirit, if you can be compelled to live a life that is divine, that's a connection to your psychic gifts. The second thing is the belief in the practice of magic and spell and ritual work,
Hmm.
right? And so, from a witch perspective, I think a lot of times they think that this is, in a dark room with candles and
A
smoke and
big black
incense.
cauldron.
Yeah, but this can be at your kitchen counter,
Yeah.
as you're cooking and saying prayers and intentions into the food that you're making. This can be, just the prayers that you say every night to make sure that your family or your loved ones are protected. And these are all acts of magic, right?
And have you totally pushed out being Catholic out of your life?
So, yeah, I mean, I have a very amazing relationship with, you know, Jesus, with Mother Mary, the concept of Catholicism and the patriarchy that's involved around it
Hmm.
just doesn't sit well with me in a lot of
Hmm.
regards. It doesn't embrace and respect and honor the divine feminine, right?
Yep.
Um, so I don't want to say pushed it out, but I've come to understand the role that it had in my life. And I wholeheartedly respect anybody that still practices and believes in it. Um, as long as, let's be real, they do so with love and not judgment and hate.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care
And
what anybody is, as long as they're not pushing it on people and they don't like it. There's all this judgment and hate.
yeah.
Um, so I've taken psychic and medium classes. I'm getting ready to take a tarot card class on the
Oh
17th
my
of
gosh.
this month for 6 weeks. And so, I mean, I haven't believed in any religion in a long, long time. But once I did my mediumship class and I connected to spirits on the other side, that's when I'm like, if everybody just would believe this, I think people would be less frightened of death and just,
Mm.
it would just be a better world in a lot of ways if people just would embrace this. But I don't know if that will ever happen.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very lovely, but there becomes people find comfort in the disbelief.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how did your psychic and mediumship abilities kind of connect with you during your recovery journey?
Yeah. So I realized at some point as I was sober, I realized part of the reason that I had been drinking, there was a handful of reasons, but one of the reasons was just the energetic overwhelm, right, of having these gifts. I mean, I believe all of us have gifts.
Hmm.
All of us have these psychic gifts. Some of us are just more sensitive, more attuned, right? It's like an artist, right? Some
Hmm.
people can sit down with pen and paper and they can draw you, a beautiful picture, not even thinking anything of it. And others have to spend months and years practicing to draw the same picture. I was both blessed and cursed with pretty strong gifts at a young age, right? And I say cursed because part of its curse led me to numb
Hmm.
through alcohol and drugs, right? It led me to numb. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm sober, I'm starting to notice I'm starting to notice the sensitivities. I'm noticing the mind reading show up. I'm noticing the feeling of like how it would feel to walk into some of these recovery rooms, and if somebody was struggling, how hard it was for me to sit close to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, these gifts awakened, and I started to, the story goes, I think I was about a month in and sitting at some of the tables, in these recovery rooms. And I realized that my grandfather found my family. It was my grandmother's fifth husband, found my family while he was in recovery, right? He
Mm.
was working a program and ended up knocking on her front door with her oldest son
Oh,
coming out of
wow.
jail. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I start seeing my grandfather. I start hearing my
Did you
grandfather.
meet him before or?
Yeah, I'd known him, but I never knew this. I knew
Yeah.
that he was an alcoholic, but I'd never realized this part of the story
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And so early in recovery, my grandfather would often talk to me, would often sit with me in
Mm-hmm.
those meetings and be there in those rooms with me, right? And I just started to watch at some point how strong these gifts were, and started to talk to my grandmother more, she was a medium when she still walked this earth, and started to connect and really realized how important that conversation with the divine, whether it was my spirit guides, my ancestors, my higher self, realized how important that conversation, that regular connection was,
Mm-hmm.
in making me feel comfortable and confident in my recovery. Yeah.
What do you think happens to us when we die? Just to tell, I mean, I know what I think, but just what would you tell my audience what do you think happens?
That's a really complicated question. I mean, it's an easy question, but a complicated
Yeah.
answer. I think we have our physical form that does what it does, whatever you
Yeah.
do, whether you've cremated or you're buried or
Yeah.
anything of that nature. I believe that our soul continues to move forward throughout lifetimes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the concept of past lives, but I also believe that our souls have an imprint or a remembrance of this particular lifetime. That is why, even if a soul continues to move forward into multiple lifetimes, we can still connect with our ancestors and the spirits as we knew them in our lifetime,
Yeah.
right? So, I believe in the collective consciousness. I believe in the thought that everything happens all at once, everywhere. And so with this, I can talk to my grandfather, and my grandfather's soul could still be reincarnated in another life somewhere else.
Can you talk to him whenever you want?
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could do it with my father. I never mastered it, so I know it's like years and years of practice, but I was never able to do that.
I will tell you, having conversation on a regular basis is the first step. I mean, I've mentored and coached folks for years on their gifts, and they're like, "How do I start hearing spirit?" And I said, "Do you talk to them?" Well, no. I said, "Well, then you're not going to hear them.
Yeah.
So you got to talk to them first." Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the Sovereign Phoenix and how did it start?
Mm. So the Sovereign Phoenix just finished the incorporation process and setting everything up. Yeah, like literally. But it started back in February for some odd reason. And I lead a spirit-driven life. Some odd reason in February, I started having like ads show up for churches, like church buildings.
Oh,
and
really?
So I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, this is really, I mean, I love old buildings as it is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is fascinating. And for a moment, I was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to buy an old church building. Maybe I'm supposed to like use that for ritual or something, or like, I don't know, maybe there's something I should do. And as I leaned further into it and started to have conversations with spirit around like, where is this coming from? And why are you bringing this to the table? It became more and more obvious as I was talking to spirit, and as well as listening in the recovery circles that I lead, that there is a need for some protection for us that are practicing witches, especially those of us that are using our practice of witchcraft in recovery. And so spirit was the one that told me, I think it was probably April or May of this year, you're being called to start a religious organization for witches in recovery.
And did you find a church?
So I didn't find a church building. What I have found is two recovery community organizations that are local to me that have partnered with me to be able to offer these
Mm.
services and connect to the community through them. So they have physical locations.
You don't have to tell me what state you're in, just but what part of the country are you in?
I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Michigan.
Oh, okay. There was there was like two old churches that came up in my house seeking my alerts that I get, and this one church was just so beautiful. And I think but it wasn't where I wanted to live. It was in Vermont, I think, and it was only $150,000. And it was in such beautiful. It was so beautiful. I mean, you would obviously have to do complete renovation of it to live there, because that's what I would do with it is live there. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of churches that are being sold as people move on to other things and are kind of maybe moving on from religion in some ways too. So
My hope at in some point is to have a physical location, but for right now, we've started the groundwork's there. The programming is in place, uh, and so it's just a matter of continuing to grow and raise the funds to be able to do so. Yeah.
yeah, what's the Illuminati, the School of Sober Witchcraft?
Illuminate.
Oh, Illuminate.
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no,
Illuminati, I guess, is something that's
no,
something
it
completely
is.
different.
It sounds very spooky and mysterious.
Yeah.
Um, so when I originally started down this path, before even coming into the Sovereign Phoenix, I started to just teach how I had gotten sober, how I had stayed in
Hmm.
recovery. So I have different courses and workbooks and things of that nature. So that's where the Illuminate, the Unschool of Sober Witchcraft came about. And so now I refer to the Sober Witch Life movement as both the teaching aspect with Illuminate, as well as the Sovereign Phoenix, which is the Recovery Covenant Community Organization.
And you have a book called Sober Witch Life, A Magical Guide to Recovery. And it blends your memoir, rituals, and reflection. And I will put a link to this book in the description of this podcast or video that you're listening or watching, and that way you can go and get it. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Thanks.
do you want to continue kind of building it out, or are you happy where it is now?
No, there's a lot of plans that are kind of in the works. So both from a author perspective, I've got like I think 6 or 7 different books that are like in the wings to be able
Okay.
to write and expand upon. Um, we are hoping here with the Sovereign Phoenix and the Recovery Coven to continue to extend. We already share this nationwide, but I want to be able to start to train clergy, so to speak. I call them recovery god witches,
Hmm.
train them to be able to start up their own covens in their own area, to meet with connect with recovery community organizations in their space and start seeing more and more of these circles throughout the US. My vision is to eventually have 3 meetings every single day available.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're really going to get into it then.
Yeah, I mean, I need the help and the support to do it. But yeah, I mean, there's a number of different recovery programs that are out there, and I know there's a need. I know that the reception of it has been phenomenal. And so, yeah, let's make sure that folks have an alternate recovery, platform that aligns with their own spiritual beliefs. Yeah, that's the whole purpose.
Did you have any kind of certain spells or certain ways that you were writing or rituals that you were doing that kind of helped you while you were writing the book?
Yeah, so when I wrote the book, the biggest help that I had is I have a very dear friend that's a writing coach, and she
Mm.
creates a container she refers to as a parallel play date. And so for 2 hours every week, she sets up an online a Zoom and she leads you through a guided meditation. And then you're given like that time and space to be able to write. And so, or do whatever creative,
Yeah.
aspiration that you have. And so that was how the entire year, it took me a year to write the first draft. That's what I used. I used the time and the space. And so we would have this beautiful guided meditation. I would connect with spirit. I would light a candle. I would put the incense on. And I asked my grandfather to help me help me translate this so that not only does it support witches in recovery, that anyone could pick it up, regardless if it was alcohol use, substance use, food addiction, trauma. Anyone would be able to pick it up
Yeah.
and find something valuable in it.
What do you think draws more women in LGBTQ community to witchcraft today more than you don't normally see and you're not to stereotype, you don't usually see often, I guess, and maybe I'm wrong, a straight white man wanting to do this. So what do you think draws women and LGBTQ plus people into it?
So the practice of witchcraft is a very divinely feminine energy.
Yeah.
Right. And when we think about the divine feminine energy, it's going to be aligned with our intuition. It's going to be aligned with our feels, our emotion, the emotional body, versus that divine masculine has more structure and order. So when we think about things like religion, we think about structure and order, you're going to go down Catholicism, you're going to go down Lutheran, you're going to go down Muslim, you're going to go down, some of these other more very strict. The witchcraft practice, though, is going to be aligned to anyone that truly is more in touch and aligned with their own divine feminine. And so it is a lot of women. Don't get me wrong. There are women that are more aligned to their divine masculine. It is going to be a lot of queer folks, neurodivergent folks, anybody in the LGBT community, because very often they are much more likely to embrace that divine feminine intuition, embodied. I like to be in my feels. I like the somatic experience. And I think they're a lot more comfortable leaving judgment out the door.
Yeah. So what advice would you give somebody that is being judged? Like they want to do this and, let's say that you have somebody and their friends are judging them or their family's judging them because they want to try witchcraft. What's your advice to them?
My number one piece of advice is to find the community that doesn't judge you. And I don't care if we're talking about witchcraft, we're talking about you are queer, trans, gay, you want to dress up like a furry. I don't care what it is, right? Find a community that doesn't judge you, that is safe, that welcomes you. And if you still have your family or your friends, which I wouldn't say that they would be friends in that instance, but your family or individuals that are around you that are casting judgment, that to me is a call to do some really intense shadow work to say, what does that relationship really need to be in your life?
Yeah. I think everybody needs to do that sometimes. Go through and do a family and friend check sometime to see if there's still more friends. I guess it's kind of harder to get rid of family, but I think it's important to go through and do a check on, are these the friends that even though I've been friends with them for 20 years, is this still the same person I want to be a friend with? Because I did that a few years ago and I'm still doing it. And it feels so good actually after you do it. Like it takes a while to process it, but once you're like, nope, this person's not for me anymore. And once I make that decision, like I do a lot of thinking about it. Once I make that decision, they're cut out and that's it. So.
I mean, it's easier to do it with friends because they were somebody that came into your life.
Yeah.
And therefore having them exit becomes a little bit easier. But I firmly believe that we have to take a look at that from a family perspective. Just because somebody is blood doesn't mean that they are respecting you. It doesn't mean that they are building you up. It doesn't mean that they aren't, potentially, causing abuse or trauma to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's scary sometimes is that we can fall into this trap that because someone is family, it makes it okay for them to not treat you well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I have done it with family too. There's a uncle that we have that we've all stopped speaking to. So, because he's just not a nice person.
Yeah.
And so, and his own sister doesn't speak to him. And and it's better. We're better off without him. Tell me what's one of the most unique things that you've kind of discovered as you've used your psychic powers. Like what's something that kind of blew your mind?
Aliens.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah. I haven't done this in a while, but once upon a time I used to offer like a I forget what I called it, but I offered a Zoom session where you could pay like $20 and you'd join me and 8 other people on
Okay.
Zoom, and I would answer questions from the audience. I'd go one by one, and we
Mm.
would make it at least one round. Oftentimes, we could do 2 rounds with
Yeah.
folks. And so I have somebody I'd never seen before shows up, and they're like, "I've got a really weird question, and I'm embarrassed to ask it." And I said, "Go for it." I mean, I love weird
Yeah.
questions. Like,
Yeah.
let's have at it. And they're like, "I have a feeling that I have an alien attached to me." And I'm looking at, seeing them on Zoom, and all of a sudden I can see this energetic show up and just waved at me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I was just, ever since, they don't have the same energetic as like a soul or a spirit.
Hmm.
I've seen them show up multiple other times, right? There are certain people that do have them around them. It's a very, very different experience.
Hmm.
And it's, I always kind of already had believed in aliens, but that was my like validation and proof that they're not just traveling to us on occasion. They're actually already present
Yeah.
with us. Yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping the 3-Eye Atlas was going to really turn into something. I guess it's still not too late. I think they said we have until December 19th or something. But I was really hoping it was going to be more than just some comet, which is what people are trying to play it off as now. Because I still don't know if I believe that's what it is. So, but maybe I'm just being hopeful.
I don't know. Sometimes things happen and we just aren't even told.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I had this woman on. Her name is Natalie. She's got a good following on TikTok. She does a lot of TikTok lives, and she communicates and channels through aliens. And she's been on ships and stuff before, so she was really fascinating. And she's told me something very interesting, that the aliens will not allow nuclear war to happen on this planet. And last night I was watching Bill Maher. He has I don't even know what channel he's, HBO Max or something. I was watching Bill Maher, and his first guest was a guy that does UFOs and UAPs. And he said, oh yeah, there's been lots of times where these ships have been over nuclear, where nuclear warheads are, and they've started it, they didn't launch them, and then they've shut it off.
Yeah.
And it was so like just mind blowing, because her and I literally talked about that 3 or 4 days before. And now this is what this guy on Bill Maher's TV show was saying. So it was very interesting.
That's quite a synchronicity there.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. No, I have heard that as well. So I've had a handful of folks that I've talked to. I have one friend that actually does communicate, and the same sentiment has been shared. That doesn't mean, well, let's be clear on that. That doesn't mean that they won't allow us to destroy ourselves in other ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, from the nuclear disaster perspective, yes, I've heard that more than one time.
Yeah. So what do you have next coming up? You have so much going on. Like, what do you have what do you want to do in 2026? What's your main top 3 things you want to do?
Oh gosh, you are jumping ahead. I haven't set those goals. That's a this month thing to do. I know I've got a couple of books that are in the wings right now. So the 2 big ones, I want to take the Sober Witch Life book and turn it into an actual physical workbook, like a book that somebody can actually write out. There's some feedback that I had, and Spirit had kind of inspired me to do that. So I've got that started, but I have to lay it out, which is a lot of work. And then the second one is I want to write a Tarot for Recovery book.
Oh.
So I already, during our recovery circles every week, I already pull a card and interpret it as it relates to recovery every single week. So I want to put it into a book so that anyone, regardless of what deck they're using, can actually start to do readings for themselves or for others if they wanted, related specifically to recovery.
Go back in my podcast, maybe 2 or 3 episodes back. There's a woman named Kelly Ahern who wrote, I believe, at least 2 books. Those are the ones I bought by pulling tarot cards. She was such an amazing guest. I got so much good feedback about her because she was so interesting. And yeah, like I want to be her friend forever, just because like I just had such.
So
a connection
she
with her.
wrote the actual books. By pulling.
based on pulling tarot.
Oh,
Yes.
that's fascinating. Yeah.
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 She's really, really awesome. So I'll send you the link email afterwards if you're interested in
Yeah, that would
listening
be
to it.
amazing. That would be amazing. No, tarot has played such a huge role in my life for years, but in my recovery, I mean, I pull cards almost every single morning. I have a couple of, really beautiful oracle deck that I use too for other reasons. I mean, there's just, yeah, it's so I would love to be able to give birth to that book next year. That's
Yeah. I
a
think you
big
should do
one.
it. I think it'd go over so well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world needs more stuff like this right now, especially. So
I could not agree with you more. I had the option, Zach, when I edited, I sat with Spirit and I said, what do we do? Do we find a publisher or do we
uh-huh.
self-publish? And Spirit was like, you have to publish this. It can't wait. It
Yeah.
has to be brought out into the world now.
Yeah. Are you on Amazon?
Yep.
Okay. I'll put a link to your book on Amazon. And if you can email me and tell me anywhere else you'd like people to buy it from. And I'll put a link to all your social media also in the description of the podcast or video. So
Awesome.
you've been an amazing guest. You're so interesting. I couldn't wait to talk with you. So thanks so much for being on the show. And I come back whenever you're ready to come back and talk about your next book. I'm here for you.
Oh, I appreciate that, Zach. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to follow the podcast if you haven't already, and go in and buy Sunshine's book. Do it today, because I'm doing it as soon as we hang up. So thanks, everybody, for listening.